So this is the 0750 hours GMT Tuesday, 24th of January 2023 edition of the Baby Angel Geronimo Editions Khoodeelaar television channel. And I'm Muhammad Haque, and we're going to discuss today, one of the things we are going to discuss, of course, is a piece by Jenny Russell in the Times yesterday, that is Monday the 23rd. Monday, the 23rd of January 2023. Now, that piece by Jenny Russell is actually headed, and that is what is centrally relevant, headed DEFRA, and I'm going to, can't show the image to the camera, but I'm going to read the thing. We've been posting tweets already this morning, but this is the piece that actually is worth examining. It's DEFRA won't dredge up truth about toxic seas. And this is about the massacre of the fishes and the other marine creatures around the seas around the United Kingdom, around England, and focusing particularly on areas like the Northeast, Teesside, and northeast of England, typified by areas like Teesside, where marine creatures have been massacred. There has been a lot of coverage in smaller, if you like, smaller, lower octane news outlets, but not in the so-called central or so-called national ones. So this is, for that reason, this piece by Jenny Russell is worth examining. Let's say, first of all, that being in the Times newspaper, London Times newspaper, this column by Jenny Russell, who is a regular writer on the Times, by definition, is itself not telling the whole truth. In fact, most of the truth is being not included in that piece by Jenny Russell. But the headline is absolutely spot on. DEFRA won't dredge up the truth about toxic seas. I've added the truth. Now, I have not come across Jenny Russell or her byline about the depraved criminal enterprise called DEFRA until now, until Monday, that is, until yesterday. And so therefore, it is worth raising the question as to why I haven't come across, and the answer must be, the beginning of the answer must be that she hasn't written anything that would have drawn my attention. And throughout the particular period in 2021, when there was the latest of the High Court stooge roles was being played, fronted by this evilness called injustice, sitting in the High Court called Griffiths. Now, there is no reference in my fast kind of general reading of Jenny Russell's piece on Monday, 23rd of January 2023, to the legal disservice. And there is no reference to the members of parliament. There is reference to, or there are references to Rishi Sunak. But as far as I can see, again, there is no reference to the baby angel Geronimo. Now, the reason why we have been running the banner called the Baby Angel Geronimo editions, as I have explained many times in the last 1 year or so, or more than 1 year, is to do with the evidence. It is not a fancy heading. It is the central evidence that actually exposes the corruption that is the British state, the corruption that is the British media, the corruption collectively that is the British political party system. As simultaneously, contemporaneously, we have pointed out, all the identifiable names like Nigel Lye's son Dominic Lye's son, and Private Lye's Ian Pissoff, amongst others, have colluded, have played complicit roles in aiding and abetting the massacres agenda, followed by the evilness called agenda that is operated, let's say, by the evilness called the chief vet. We call her thief vet. Christian evilness, Middlemas. So one of the things that we decided this morning to add to the list of demands is the prosecution, the demand for the prosecution of Christian Middlemas, evilness, and George Injustice, Eustace. Those two criminals conspired persistently to do damage to the baby angel Geronimo, to demonize the baby angel Geronimo, to defame the baby angel Geronimo, and to deny DEFRA's agenda of massacre, murders, cruelty, and so on. So these are the things that Jenny Russell is not talking about. What she is talking about is, how can I put it on a percentage point about, it's her piece is headed, DEFRA won't dress up the truth. But her piece is lacking in most of the truths that must be told, and she must have told. But she cannot tell them those truths because she's kind of paid employee in the Dirty Digger Rupert Murdoch's Times operation. So all of these columnists and writers who are given the money, that is hefty amount of money that they are paid compared to the others, these are only there because they agree to not tell the whole truth. In fact, they agree to not tell the truth at all. For example, the likes of the evilness called Jeremy Clarkson. He has got platforms on the Sunday Times and the Sun, and the evilness called Rod Liddell, who has got columns, and all these people. Now, slightly shifting the kind of topical name away from DEFRA to the London Metropolitan Police and the police criminality. There have been three columns that we have examined. One is the one by David Aranovich. Aranovich was himself a registered communist, but it was a complete fakery when he was a student in the 1970s or early 1980s. and he was a careerist appointee in the National Union of Students. He's long since left the tag and is no longer called a communist. He's the son of a sort of academic called Sam Aranovich. The Aranovich name is a Russian name. So there is the mixed kind of introduction to the background. But David Aranovich, his heading to the piece contained Cinderella service. So he's mainly talking about the police in topical light of the conviction and details of David Carrick. But he's also talking about other related agencies like the care agencies, etc., care services, the mental health services, etc. But essentially, David Aranovich is not telling the truth. In fact, he's telling only about 5% of the truth about the corrupt state. Now, today, Tuesday, the 24th of January 2023, what is the mainstream media agog about? What is it talking about, shouting about? It's overdoing the shouting about Nadim Zahawi and his texts and his related kind of role played by Sunak. But they're not talking about the real evilness that bedevils the entire system, locally, centrally, regionally, and in terms of the media, in terms of the parliament. So, what we do, this program, this campaign, we bring worldwide, world exclusive commentary, observation, insights. There is no other platform. Forget about the followers. We don't want followers. We just want to put on the record what we say and what we stand for, what we find. So, going back to the Jenny Russell piece about DEFRA, it is incredible, isn't it, to those concerned about the witness, baby angel Geronimo, that the DEFRA evil ones were allowed to target baby angel Geronimo, to demonize him, to continuously lie about his health, continuously invent, manufactured excuses to justify their demonization. Now, in light of Jenny Russell's piece, I have examined earlier today part of the ruling or the report by this evilness called his injustice, Griffith in 2021. Now, Griffith says, under the heading the law, and in the contents underneath that heading, let me just find this one that I really want to tell the exact quotation. There is a thing called Animal, Plant and Health Agency. Now let's say, in light of the fact that after being fined and after being forced to pay millions of pounds in Texas that he lied about, Nadim Zahawi is being allowed, even now and this morning, Tuesday, 24th of January 2023, to say that it was just a kind of error. In the history of English law, let's say, as recorded, as archived, etc., etc., there is no evidence, there is absolutely no evidence that any level of the court system has ever allowed the possibility that an ordinary litigant, ordinary person before the court, either as a defendant or as a claimant, would be given the option to say that one of the reasons for their conduct concerned was their mistake. They just made a mistake. They made an error. It has not, there is no evidence, there is no evidence record entry whatsoever in the so called jurisprudence. And jurisprudence is the collection of the so called reasoning and the collection of the so called evidence and the so called correlation between the evidence and the reasoning and the so called findings. There is nothing that can be found in the archived contents of the English jurisprudence that says that an ordinary person before the court can be allowed the excuse that they forgot. You don't forget, because there is this other saying that ignorance of the law is no excuse. Now, here, Zahawi is not even bothering to refer to the law. He's just saying, he's shrugging his criminal, corrupt shoulders. Now, in the Islamic, truthful Islamic kind of tradition, there are two angels on the shoulders. As I speak, I am absolutely conscious that I'm not going to make up anything because my witnesses on the right and the left are recording. And this has been going on before the physical act of recording began. So this Zahawi, who is supposed to be from a background, a Muslim background, should have known that he must not tell lies. But Zahawi, like the stupid Javid, who has now effectively, in effect, denounced his Islamic background, Pakistani Islamic background, Zahawi is completely, showing two fingers to the Islamic injunction, the duty, the command that thou shalt not, the Muslim must not tell lie. Well, a human being, but in the context of the Islamic faith, the Muslim must not tell a lie. So, what do they replace this abandoning of the Islamic command with? What do they replace? The likes of Zahawi and the likes of stupid Jabid, who is now engaged in doing the evil work for the evil ones to destroy the National Health Service, the principle of the National Health Service. What? There is no evidence, and he is not qualified, he is not competent. When he was a minister that was involved in the early period of his career as a minister, he was involved in the crisis at a factory or the farm owned by an Indian, Tata, I think, in Wales. And any examination, because I examined him at the time, but that was some years ago, any examination now of his words and his logic would expose him as an idiot. I mean, they're saying, everyone is saying on the media that Zahawi made his millions by being a co founder of the UGAB. Now, UGAB is a criminal outfit, a propaganda outfit which has been mainly promoted by a racist cunt called Peter Kellner. Kellner really is gross. The Peter Kellner and Zahawi and their ilk co-founded or founded this UGAB. How is it that UGAB can have generated millions and millions of pounds for these criminals? The answer is because it was a tool for liars in the propaganda thing to brainwash the ordinary people. That is why. It was not about holding the elected republic post holding criminals to account. It was the reverse. It was to hide the truth and so on. So when DEFRA won't dredge up truth about toxic seas appears in the Times about the mass murders of the marine creatures. Truth is not what the Times itself is concerned about. And we shall go to the other point on the front page of the Times on Monday about the Chinese interests taking over the British universities. And I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, that these kind of headings managed to include the massacres of the genocides the Chinese have been carrying out of the Muslim Uyghurs. The Uyghurs never feature anywhere otherwise. They only feature as a kind of propaganda lever to put the Chinese kind of under the focus of Muslims, and they want to recruit the Muslims' attention against Chinese by saying Uyghurs, not because they want to safeguard the Uyghurs or uphold the rights of the Uyghurs or put on trial any of the mass murderers of the Uyghurs, ever. Just like in Burma. They have not talked about the genocide against the Rohingyas. And the genocide against the Rohingyas in 2017 was perpetrated by the British kind of nominee for the Nobel Prize, although it's not officially ever acknowledged who nominates who for the Nobel Prize, but it was the British mainly. And the British must have touted the Americans like Churchill did during the Second so-called World War to get the USA involved in the Second World War so-called opposition to the Germans. Because the weight, political weight internationally of the Americans is considerably heavier than the weight that the British can ever exert or have been able to exert for 200 years. So the Nobel Prize that Aung San Suu Kyi was given, a Nobel Prize that has been used in favor of promoting her as a kind of champion of humanity and all the rest of it. It was a sham prize. Like most Nobel Prizes politically are sham ones. The only exceptions can be some of the scientific kind of awards. The Peace Prize and all the rest of it, like Kissinger and the Israeli whatever. These are bogus. They're not genuine ones. Anyway, so Aung San Suu Kyi committed the genocide and mass murder. She was the head of the state in Burma. And the British have completely forgotten about the genocide of the Muslims, the Rohingyas in Burma, by Burma. So the Uyghurs are only being mentioned occasionally by the British, like the Times on the front page yesterday included the Uyghurs as three of the groups or three of the topics that it wanted to emphasize to show that the British universities were neglecting those topics and those issues when they were getting too cozy with the Chinese universities, the Chinese interests, the Chinese agencies. So what I'm saying is the truth is not dominating the agenda, the thinking, the considerations, the prioritization of the news, the prominence, the give to a particular news. Like yesterday, they gave it on the front page. Now, Jenny Russell has talked about Sunak, and her piece ends by condemning the complex complacence of Rishi Sunak's regime about the massacre of the marine creatures. Now, DEFRA, although it was kind of made in terms of news coverage, it was made quite prominent because of the frequency with which DEFRA was used to intervene during the period, the middle period of Tony Blair's years in post. And the frontier for DEFRA was the criminal called John Prescott. The Prescott is a working class labeled criminal. That's the only thing that he has got. He is not a moral person, he is not an ethical person, and is a complete and utter absolute liar. Prescott, Kinnock, and all the rest of them. And there is no sound, there is no reference in Jenny Russell's piece to Starmer or the Labour Party front bench about the environment, about the climate, about the planet, about the obviously the demonization of the animals that are innocent, perfectly healthy, and all the rest of it. All the stooge role played by three of the High Court judges in kind of in sequence, like three of them behaved as DEFRA stooges and they ruled against the baby angel Geronimo's claim that he was innocent, he was perfectly healthy, there was no evidence. And the other thing is that despite the fact that the plea by baby angel Geronimo included the fact that he demanded to be tested independently in order to determine conclusively and objectively the truth about his state of health. Why did DEFRA refuse to do that? Simple answer is that the DEFRA knew that baby angel Geronimo was absolutely healthy, perfectly healthy, the healthiest creature living. So they didn't want to allow that demand for independent, objective testing of the health. Now, in light of the recent admission by the injustice, evilness called George Eustace, that while he was in post, the Brexit related deal with Australia and New Zealand, Australia, let's say, because of the volume involved for agricultural imports, that deal was more in favor of Australia than in favor of the United Kingdom. That is an admission. It's an admission about something that he played a formal part in fronting the United Kingdom. If that is possible, then why not? Why not make this criminal admit to his lies over years against baby angel Geronimo? We demand that, and we are demanding this, and we're going to reinforce the demand. Whether he's standing again for the election or not, it doesn't matter. The liar is on the record as having admitted. And the other thing he has admitted, this liar, is that now that he is no longer a minister, he doesn't have to pretend. He doesn't have to pretend to be telling the truth when he is actually not telling the truth. So he is confessing, being candid, etc., about some of the lies that he took part in, and he peddled and he fronted. Now remember, this is one, and the other individuals involved in the perpetration of the lies, as highlighted by the campaign by Baby Angel Geronimo, the witness, have included, of course, the perennial liar and evilness called Boris Johnson. Now, look at this internationally. Johnson, the criminal, the crook, son of a crook, brother of a crook, Rachel Johnson. This criminal has not been incumbent in any of the state posts for months. So, what the fuck is he doing? Being photographed, prominently photographed on the front page of the Times, which is what happened yesterday, Monday. What the fuck? What role has he got? And as far as I can see, Starmer is not pointing this out. And whatever she said, Angela Rayner, about Zahawi, I don't believe that she actually included Johnson's adventures in Ukraine. Johnson is not a statesman, and the Ukrainian kind of incumbent in the post of president of the Ukraine is worse than an embarrassment. That shitbag physically looks like he is depending on Boris Johnson. What the fuck for? Johnson is only surfacing like the shit. I mean, he's only taking money. I mean, what is the moral, ethical purpose of Johnson visiting Ukraine or even spewing about Ukraine? So you've got and then you've got the others in the conservatives. But as I say, Starmer is the political murderer of the Labour Party. That is to say, Starmer doesn't actually morally represent an alternative to the conservative lies. And it's a big if there is an election, and if there is an election that is kind of concluded with the surfacing of Starmer at number 10 Downing Street, let nobody imagine that that will mean that the era of corruption, cronyism, big business will end, and justice, or an idea of justice for the people who have been victimized, denied, deprived over the last 14 years by the cons, will come to an end. It will not. And our narrative, of course, is based entirely on the evidence. And the evidence is that the media is complicit in the lying, including the Times, of course, and the Parliament is complicit in the lying. The judiciary is a stooge of the lying state. So when Starmer says that attempts are being made by him or on his behalf to normalize, reconnect the United Kingdom with the world, what does he mean? I mean, Starmer is a complete and absolute liar and a criminal liar. My communications to him during 2011, when he was in post as the DPP, Director of Public Prosecutions, were related to and based on the evidence of criminal activities going on in Tower Hamlets, especially in Brick Lane, and especially against the various addresses where I and the campaign that I represent had our hard drives and archives contents, because there is not one single place where all the documents and all the materials could be stored or placed or kept. So I named the criminals to Keir Starmer, the DPP, because of course reports were sent to the police, but of course, as anyone observing the police behavior knows, the police have been dropping the level of crime and criminality from most of the activities of criminals. So I wrote to Keir Starmer many times, and the criminal completely remained silent, and he's still silent on all of those. And it goes on. And as I have said before, the role that Starmer played as a conservative fascist against the most deprived claimants, people that were being deprived and denied their benefits by the DWP, deprivation, want, and poverty creation, DWP, those people were the last ones, were the least ones to be penalized additionally. And yet, that is exactly what this criminal, Keir Starmer, did. Added, he added a number of procedural obstacles against these claimants. Remember, when the DWP was being fronted by Ian Dracula Duncan Smith, egged on by the criminal George Osborne as the Chancellor, who himself needed about 8 or 9 jobs at the same time when he left office. These criminals condemned Ian Duncan Smith and Dracula Duncan Smith and George Osborne. They condemned the poorest people, the most vulnerable people, and denied them any benefits whatsoever. And many of those people who were thus deprived and robbed of their legitimate benefits and support were forced to commit suicide. That is what happened. So that is what Starmer made even worse by making it even harder for so many claimants to make the claims that they were legitimately, factually, evidentially entitled to make. Where is the outcry? There is no outcry. What is his name? I mean, those people who overhype the image of Jeremy Corbyn, some of them may be upset or have been upset by the consistent, evidential, fact based assertion that I have made about Corbyn. Must know this. Corbyn could have only failed because he lacked the intellect. It's not like I have got some kind of competition with Corbyn. I don't. I never needed a competition with any of them. Point is that he was in post for a number of years. And what did he do? Corbyn never, Jeremy Corbyn never made any memorable, significant observation about the role in creating poverty played by the local councils, and he most certainly didn't do that about the massacre of the claimants by the DWP, forcing suicides. Let's see if I can find the item for the record for the to illustrate the point about the claimants that committed suicide or forced to commit suicide. This is the item. Let's see what. All right, now this is the heading that is dated in a piece disabilityrightsuk.org. Its heading is DWP accused of blocking claimant suicide research. Now, obvious, isn't it? They didn't want research into the suicide by claimants. Was that bad enough? Of course it wasn't. Because even worse was the piece 2 years previously, that is, this one was March the 2nd, 2022. But on the 26th of February 2020, the same organization, Disability Rights Group.uk, disabilityrightsuk.org, DWP destroyed reports into claimants who committed suicide. Has anyone heard anything from Jeremy Corbyn about any of that? Not really. When he visited our hamlets, and where I filmed him, which I broadcast on YouTube, lasting about a minute or so, Corbyn was pathetically shallow. Now, as I have said, I have observed Corbyn at the various meetings held in Tower Hamlets where he attended. And most of the agenda that Corbyn, in my observation, in my view, followed were identical to the agenda and the narrative of the ozone provocateurs, the SWP wonkers, the socialist wonkers. And then face to face, when I shared a platform in public with him at the beginning of the 1980s at the Altabali Park, I was the speaker at a rally before Corbyn was the speaker at the same rally. And after I finished my short speech, I had to give the microphone to him. And as he took the microphone, Corbyn said, "I wish I could speak like you." Now, that is exactly the phrase that Ken Lying Still Livingstone had said to me in 1977, after he and I were among the main speakers at a rally at a small event held at the Wandsworth Town Hall in 1977. And the question arises, why do they say that? Because neither Corbyn nor Livingstone would have repeated that in public to the wider population about me and my kind of abilities that they apparently appreciated. Why would they not do that? Simple answer is that because they are racists and they know that if they support me and my practical, material, evidential stand, then it would be attracting support to me. As simple as that. So, what do? They then go for the most banal, stupid, ignorant diversity tokens who are devoid of anything like what they found in me. And it goes on. That is the serial thing, which is why we go back to the 1947 and the period leading up to the years leading up to 1947, when this subcontinent, which is now nearly 2 billion people, was being so called freed from the British Empire. The Labour Party, the Labour Party in the United Kingdom didn't play a leading role for liberation, freedom, independence from empire. And even after Winston Churchill diverted those resources, causing millions of people to be starved to death in Bengal. It's Bengal, including West Bengal and parts of today's Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is a federation, so it's not all of Bengal. Bangladesh is not all Bengal. Silot is not Bengal. Chittagong is not Bengal, and other parts of Bangladesh are not Bengal. But the main Bengal that people died in were in Bengal, in West Bengal of today, and East Bengal, mainly main bulk of the Bangladesh. So Churchill diverted the resources from that part, 1943. So they were still very much in the British Empire. The Labour Party has nothing to say about that. The incumbents in the Labour Party leadership posts have nothing to say. How the fuck? 3 million people, at least 3 million people are massacred, murdered, genocided. So that's the background against Churchill. And that's the context in which we say the Starmer is a political murderer of the Labour Party. That reference goes back to way before the silence of the Labour Party over Churchill's genocidal behavior. We go back to the Kia Hardy mythology and others said to be the founders, among the founders of the Labour Party. By that, of course, is meant, or supposedly is meant, the ideals implementing which the Labour Party would be the main party. Of course, not the likes of Ramsay MacDonald, who was the first Labour Prime Minister. So, what we are looking at today, 24th of January 2023, in the UK political mainstream, is that it is a sick society. Political institutions, agencies are completely sick and sick making. So when the strikes, which are among the topics of discussion today as well, when the strikes are being held and organized and mentioned, the argument in support of the strike and strikes and walkouts is about low pay and poverty and all the rest of it. But if you look at the policies of the trade unions and employees in the National Health Service that make the decision, executive decision, those policies are not central in the actual behavior of those workers towards the people that are supposed to be receiving the services, patients in the NHS, passengers in the transport system. And there is no presence in the Labour Party of anyone or any force that actually speaks up for the patients, for the ordinary people, and so on. That is why when DEFRA is mentioned in the Times and the word truth is used against the behavior of the DEFRA bureaucracies and the bureaucrats and the behavior of Sunak as the incumbent in the post of Prime Minister. DEFRA is not being mentioned there as being a kind of operation against the truth, against the truth of the likes of the baby angel Geronimo. We have said before, but it is worth saying in the context of this update about the DEFRA, that those people who claim to be supporters of the cause for baby angel Geronimo in 2021 and claim to be so, those ones, not everyone that supported the baby angel Geronimo, because baby angel Geronimo has got a base of supporters who are not necessarily specialists, but kind hearted people, compassionate people who love the baby angel Geronimo, full stop. But there were a persistent number of individuals that, how shall I put it, took over the field, took over the platform, but they were issuing all kinds of things saying that they were experts, they were trained in animal health and so on. What did they do? They said that they were campaigning against the DEFRA attacks on the baby angel Geronimo. But what did they do? Did they actually force DEFRA to confess that it had been lying? There is no evidence for saying anything that it had been saying against baby angel Geronimo. Did they do that? The evidence says that they didn't. And the question then arises, why not? And the answer is that because those people who, as I said, took over the platform for that period of few months are themselves careerist opportunists who are in one way or another dependent on DEFRA's kind of privilege and DEFRA's kind of approval. Now, take this commentary back to the Khoodeelaar campaign and the strategy and the tactics that I developed. Well, I had developed before, but that I implemented effectively during the campaign against the Crossrail hold. You cannot do a campaign. You cannot do a campaign by simply saying you are campaigning. You cannot do a campaign by simply saying you've got some demands. You cannot say even the reasons for the campaign and then expect that campaign to become realized. It doesn't happen like that. A campaign only works against a state agency when the people making the decisions at any level concerned are exposed to losing their particular careers and advantages. When that happens, what is called the attention, the mental attention is focused very strongly and clearly on that. So when we started the campaign against the Crossrail whole plot by the UK central government, we actively prioritized the focus 1, 2, 3 in that order on the local council and then the central government. Why? Because the locally elected so-called councillors were likely to be most vulnerable to lose their positions if we provided enough material for ordinary people in the electorate to see them for what they were, these elected individuals. This is exactly what happened on the 22nd of January 2006 in the Brady Centre, where the Khoodeelaar campaign rally took place. And I was the main speaker, although my speech didn't last as long as the contributions made by other people. But I was the keynote speaker. Everything I said at that gathering was listened to with pin drop silence and with the extreme maximum attention and respect and focus. And what was the pivotal point that I was focusing on? It was the role of the councillors, Tower Hamlets councillors. And the councillors, whatever the length of the rally, however long it lasted, 90 minutes, whatever, the rally was probably politically, locally, the most unbearable experience on the part of those councillors. Because the political heat that they were undergoing was absolutely the maximum. Now, I've been campaigning physically on the streets of Tower Hamlets for 50 years. And there has never been a rally like that one. Well, we have had rallies, but not like that one. Of course, my interventions have always been linked with generating heat against the target of the campaign. So, what happened? These councillors, Tower Hamlets councillors, were put under extreme heat and they could not bear it. And they could not wait for the rally to finish. And as they experienced the heat, that is probably one of the last events that completely convinced them that they must come out and get this Crossrail whole plot abandoned by the government, which is what happened. In March, the government effectively decided to drop the plan. Now, this is something historic in terms of the fact that no central government plan anywhere in the United Kingdom has been defeated by simple, ordinary people campaigning. I'm an ordinary person campaigning. I'm not a member of parliament. I'm not an elected councillor. And I held no elected public position. And I organized the whole thing. Now, contrast this with the campaign supposedly going on against HS2. There is no sign that any local councillor, any local MP has been targeted by campaigners against HS2 for securing the loss of that post by the MP or the local councillors. And we focused on the councillors in Tower Hamlets Council, and we focused mainly on the leader or leadership. And none of them lost their actual positions at the time, but it was only a matter of time that they would lose their positions. So when I held the rally on the 22nd of January 2006, it was a rally attended by people of Labour Party, Conservative Party, the Lib Dems, and so on, and people without any particular party political affiliations. They were universally dedicated to the cause. And for that reason, my role was pivotal, central, and they appreciated that because they could see the correlations. So what happened with the other campaigns that I have been involved in, for example, to oppose the imposition of the corrupt post of elected mayor on Taramlers? Why did it fail? Because it did fail. The answer is that we couldn't. We couldn't get anyone among the councillors or in the community to focus on them so that if the campaign to stop the elected mayor post being imposed on Hamlets, if that campaign succeeded, it would only succeed if we could identify an individual councillor or a number of councillors to lose their council position. That wasn't possible because there was no election coming. And the more important thing was that among the people who allegedly supported the call to stop the imposition of the elected mayor post were some of the individuals who were lying because they wanted to be mayors themselves, like Abbas and others. And of course, Lutfur Rahman, who was not a kind of incumbent in a post of mayor because the mayor post was yet to be created 4 years hence. If we had people like Abbas Uddin Elias Halal telling the truth, then of course we would have stopped the post being created. But we couldn't control the minds and the mental position of the liars like Abbas Uddin Elias Halal who lied. So that's the difference. You have to be in a campaign, you have to be absolutely clear and you have to target absolutely 100% correctly. And you have to have 100% truthful people taking part in the campaign. That didn't happen during the campaign to stop the mayor post being created or foisted on Trahamers. Now, in the case of Croydon, where the previous Labour Party controlled Croydon Council had looted hundreds of millions of pounds of Croydon money. So instead of saying that stop the corruption in the Croydon Council, the Lib Dems are political kind of parasites. And they're dishonest and they're liars. Well, all the parties are, but this one is a particularly nasty operative, this Lib Dems. Instead of focusing on stopping the corruption by Croydon Council and in Croydon Council, the Lib Dems, I mean, this is unthinkable logically and rationally and ethically and morally. But this unthinkable was done by the Lib Dems. They decided, instead of calling for an end to corruption, they decided to create the elected mayor post. Now, the elected mayor post is a guaranteed source of corruption of its own. A guaranteed source of corruption of its own. And that is what is happening in Croydon. And who is the mayor? It's a conservative. The liberals politically are known as the bastard party. They have given the political control to the conservatives. And it goes on. So the campaign, the principle of campaign is to focus on the truth, telling the truth, and sticking to the truth, sticking by the truth, and making no compromise where it comes to telling the truth. And there is no power politically in a kind of democracy that is more persuasive. There is no power, there is no influence, there is no force that is more persuasive on the minds of the careers than the truth, which is not being told in Tower Hamlets, which is not being told in Newham, which is not being told in any borough in London, and most certainly not in the central government, not by the media, not even in the Times piece by Jenny Russell about DEFRA not telling the truth. It is at least recognizing the absence of the truth, but she is not going anywhere near telling the truth, and she is not referring to the campaign by Baby Angel Geronimo, the witness, Baby Angel Geronimo. So those criminals, opportunists who pretended in 2021 that they were supporters of Baby Angel Geronimo, have gone quiet. And no surprise, because Jenny Russell doesn't mention any of them. And yet Baby Angel Geronimo remains the most authentic witness of British political agencies, institutions, and structures. And everything that Baby Angel Geronimo represents as the truthful witness, the unique witness, is being updated by us, will be updated by us, and will be vindicated as every aspect of it so far published has been vindicated. What is happening in the context of the judiciary? Let's say the Griffiths. I mean, Griffiths was the one of the judges in justice, and Griffiths effectively repeated almost chapter and verse the narrative, the agenda against Baby Angel Geronimo that his two predecessors had done in their previous sittings. That's one. The other thing is that the people who, the licensed law traders that had to be kind of hired or appointed to speak in the courts on behalf of Baby Angel Geronimo were themselves morally compromised, ethically compromised, and lacked the necessary moral, ethical commitment to defending the truth. And they didn't advise Baby Angel Geronimo about the various options and the alternatives. Most important aspect of that failure by the so-called licensed law traders is the fact that they actually did not recognize themselves. They didn't recognize the international treaties, which is constitutionally one of the things that I always point out. The United Kingdom remains a signatory to international treaties, declarations, conventions, agreements that it is signed up to. And the collective kind of implication of all of those is that if those are adhered to and if they're cited, then without any problem, that is to say, without any difficulty in finding the evidence of the United Kingdom breaking those, dozens of instances and aspects of failings and breaches by the United Kingdom can be found. Now, the licensed law traders who supposedly represented the Baby Angel Geronimo at many of these so-called hearings and private sessions were themselves servants of the corrupt judicial system. More importantly, they were servants of their own careers, which is why the judicial decisions by these stooge judges went in favor of the untruthful DEFRA. There is no mention of any of that in Jenny Russell's column. And she's only what can be called a jobbing writer, a columnist. She's not writing a morally, ethically campaigning column, nor is David Aranovich about the police, nor is Camilla Long in the Sunday Times about her boyfriend Ben, who is a photographer who was hassled by the police, nor is Matthew Paris, who is writing about the police and Suella Braverman and the old fashioned police and all the rest of it. So these are people with limitations, moral limitations, ethical limitations. Because we are not a campaign conditional on a career, we don't have the moral restrictions to tell the half truth. We tell the truth as much as the truth is obvious to us. So we shall be continuing to tell the truth in later editions. We stop this one at 08:58 hours GMT on Tuesday, the 24th of January 2023.